They call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. Perhaps that saying has never been so true, when people who are dreaming about that dream have to sleep in their own car, in the middle of Walmart parking lot. From the dream of a small suburban house, a first car, a happy family, and a stable job, America was built on the belief that hard work will be exchanged for prosperity. But by 2025, American dream has redefined. Now it's working overtime, living in an RV, and waiting until the end of the month to pay off the debt. Across America, millions of workers are becoming homeless people have jobs, a new class in modern society. They wore uniforms, employee tags, and worked 10 and 12 hours a day. But at night they got into the car that had become the kitchen, bedroom, and shelter. This is no longer the story of the unemployed or the poor, but a sign of an America that is losing the ability to nurture the very people who keep it running. When hard work is no longer synonymous with stable and free is no longer tied to safe, then perhaps the American dream has truly woken up and turned into a nightmare. In today's video, we will find out why millions of Americans who, even though they still go to work every day, are in the situation of having to live in an RV. What is pushing them out of their homes, and what is making the dream called American Dream take such a dark path? The employment situation in the US is not necessarily in crisis, but the value of jobs, and especially the value of salaries, is shrinking day by day. The market still has work, but the standard of living is no longer guaranteed. Americans work more, but buy less. It is a bit of a paradox of the modern economy. It is not jobs that disappear, but purchasing power and value in work that are gradually being wiped out. Perhaps everyone who lived through the 70s and 80s remembers, a house in America at that time only needed a few years' salary. A breadwinner could support the whole family and even accumulate for the future of their children. Now, even when carrying 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, many people still cannot keep up with the minimum cost of living. According to a survey by Visual Capitalist, 49.1% of Americans say the cost of living is the biggest worry today, a number that reflects a silent but common fear. How to survive next month? The average minimum wage in the US is currently about $15 an hour. But the standard of living from rent, gas, food, insurance has increased many times in just a few years. Want to buy a house? Americans today have to work twice as much as their parents, as home prices have risen more than 50% from before the pandemic. Want a stable life? Make sure you are more than middle class, because middle class is now sleeping in the car too. Their stability, class was once considered the backbone of America, is gradually becoming an outdated fairy tale. But the paradox doesn't stop there. Working overtime also does not make them earn extra income. Because even when workers work overtime, they are still not paid the right amount of effort. The federal labor law, established in 1938, clearly stipulates every hour exceeding 40 hours a week must be paid time and a half, or 1.5 times the salary. A seemingly simple principle, but in the era of gig economy and contract economics, it almost lost its effectiveness. Companies have found loopholes. They misclassify employees, call hourly workers manager or salaried exempt, even though the actual job is no different. This method helps them legally avoid the obligation to pay overtime. As a result, millions of Americans work overtime, but are not paid an extra penny. According to estimates, about 50 billion USD a year is lost in the form of wage theft, wages stolen from workers' own efforts. This number is higher than the total loss from property theft in the US each year. In fiscal year 2024, the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division, DOLWHD, recovered $127 million in wages owed, involving more than 101,000 workers. On average, each person loses about $1,250 USD, equivalent to nearly a week of unpaid work. If you include minimum wage and tip, the total amount owed amounts to $149.9 million USD for more than 125,000 people, or about 1,200 USD each. The individual numbers seem small, but combined, they make a giant leak in the US economy, where the true value of labor is draining by the hour. Meanwhile, reform efforts remain blocked. In 2024, the Department of Labor tried to raise the overtime minimum wage threshold from $35,068 to $43,188 a year. But it was overturned by a Texas federal court after business associations objected. As a result, millions of people are still exempted from paying legal overtime, even though they have to work 50,060 hours per week to compensate for inflation and escalating living prices. Those people aren't lazy. There's no lack of effort. They're just living in an America where work ethic has lost its practical value. Overtime is no longer to rise, but to hold out. The more you do it, the more exhausted you become. The harder they try, the further away from the stability they once believed was a worthy reward for honest labor. When all roads are blocked by costs, interest rates, and laws, many people have only one last choice left: move on wheels. The RVs, which were symbols of freedom, now become temporary shelters for the exhausted working class. There, people still get up early, go to work, pay taxes, contribute to running the country much. Just other than at night, they sleep in the same car parked on the side of the road. And that was the beginning of a new wave of working homeless. Americans who still go to work every day, but come back at night to sleep in their cars. The difference between salary and standard of living in the US is becoming so harsh that does not become homeless has become the new standard of living, especially for retirees, people living on a fixed income, or those who are trying to hang on to inflation. America was once a symbol of the dream of the suburban cottage, is now seeing a distorted version of itself. People who commute full-time but have to live in the car because there are no more houses to live in. This phenomenon is called RV homelessness. Not because they want minimalism or free adventure, but because they are pushed out of the housing system. No one chooses to sleep in the car because they choose because it is the last choice before falling to the bottom. On social networks, videos with the hashtag #TryVanLife still attract millions of views, drawing poetic images of a liberal life, morning coffee, windows opening to the sunrise in the Arizona desert. But behind that lens is a completely different America. Thousands of old RVs scattered on Walmart yards, along highways, or in empty suburban plots. A distinct two-story picture. On one side is a free traveler, on the other is a homeless mobile person. According to Urban Institute, in just 3 years, 2020-2023, the number of people living in the 23% increase was largely older workers or pensioners excluded from the housing market. They are not unemployed. They just can no longer keep up with house prices and rents. Average home prices in the US have exceeded $400,000, while rents have increased more than 25% in most major cities. In Los Angeles, renting a one-room apartment can now cost $2,700, $3,500 a month, far exceeding the average income of millions of workers. Meanwhile, in Tennessee or Arizona, many people choose to live in an RV park priced at about $500, $600 USD a month, half cheaper than a mid-range apartment despite unsafe and comfortable conditions. In NBC's report, a 67-year-old man who used to be a diver now lives in a 20-year-old camper acquired for $5,000. He did not dare turn on the gas stove for fear of explosion, only eating instant noodles and canned foods to save electricity. In another RV block, a 60-year-old woman, working the night shift caring for the disabled, lived in a permanently parked car. She pays $550 a month for parking, less than half the price of a $1,200 apartment in Chattanooga. Every night after shift, she returned to her narrow car with a few basic items, sleeping amid the sound of her neighbors starting their engines in the same situation. Those people are not wandering. They are veterans, teachers, nurses, workers, single parents, elderly pensioners. They once contributed to building this country, and now they are living on the sidelines of it. In temporary neighborhoods made of steel and plastic, with temporary electrical connections, dripping water, shared toilets, and worries every morning of being asked by the police to relocate. Ironically, the RV, that once symbolized freedom and adventure, has now become a symbol of bondage. It is no longer a mobile home, but a shelter for those who once believed in the American dream. The new American dream is to live in a nice van. The saying sounds like a joke, but it also contains the tragedy of the times. When the house American, symbol of stable, turns into an old car, then the American dream is no longer a journey towards the future, but a never-ending escape from the present. Now, the parking lots have become new residential for the left-behind class. Amid the lights of the city, the cars lie dormant as quiet witnesses to an America that is turning to another chapter, where the employed still have to live as refugees in their own homeland. And the question is becoming increasingly clear. What makes the home that underpins that dream so luxurious that workers have to drive to live? Once upon a time, housing was a natural reward for honest labor, was a place for Americans to dream of peaceful evenings on the porch, a home, a future. But now, having a place to stay is no longer a basic right, but a privilege. After the pandemic, the US housing market changed color. What was once considered a residence is gradually turned into a financial commodity, a tool for speculation, borrowing, and profitability. Real estate investment corporations, private equity funds, and short-term rental companies massively buy cheap houses, then turn them into profitable properties instead of residences for people. Housing, which is the foundation of the American dream, has been put on the stock exchange. That entails an ironic consequence. Even RV Park, the last low-income shelter, is capitalized. By parking areas that used to be for retirees or working poor are now switched to the short-term vacation rental model, catering to visitors and nomads. In many states, RV parking space rents have doubled in just 5 years, from $500 a month 2019 to $200 or more in 2024, without even adequate electricity, water, or sanitation. For workers, this is the final blow. When even a parking spot blew the price, they lost their only temporary roof. The RVs, which were the last house, now have nowhere to park. Some people have to move cars every week to avoid fines. Others have to pay parking rent close to half their monthly salary, just to have a few meters of land temporarily called house. Society's view of housing has also changed. Instead of being a home to live in, a home is now a property to keep. The market system began to consider housing as a profitable investment, causing low-income people to rent back their own dreams. When homes become financial products, the poor become consumable assets. An expert once said, "When houses become stocks, poor people become fees, things that can be eliminated when profits need to be optimized." The scarcity of housing creates a fierce domino effect. Businesses cut benefits to keep profits. Salary does not increase, while rental prices, insurance prices, electricity, gasoline and food prices simultaneously escalated. People are sandwiched between two options: debt for life or itinerant life. Every brick of American dream is being bought by the invisible hands of investment funds, of interest rates, of the very market that workers can never participate in equally. And when roof is turned into stock code, people are left with only one choice: movement to survive. In America today, people still say working hard will pay off. But for millions of people, that is now just an empty, comforting statement, because they are stuck in a survival spiral with no way out, works extra to pay off debt, sells houses to live in RVs, then has to work extra to pay parking fees for the car itself called house. According to an NBC News report, more and more Americans sell all to live in the car because they simply don't have enough money left to rent a permanent house. They park RVs next to gas stations, in industrial parks, or behind Walmart, supermarkets where few people pay attention, as long as there is water and Wi-Fi to continue working. Some people still keep full-time jobs, working night or morning shifts, but everything they earn is just enough to last another month of survival. For the elderly, that tragedy is even clearer. The average Social Security allowance is only about $1,970 a month, while rental prices in many places have far exceeded that number. A retiree in Arizona shared, "I can't rent an apartment, but I also can't die on the street. RV is the only option I have." And so, from workers, teachers, drivers, nurses, they transform into a new generation of American nomads. A nomadic economy is forming, where people no longer move because of freedom, but because they are forced to leave. They drive through states, looking for places with cheaper gas prices, lower parking fees, or less strict regulations for people living in the car. From California to Texas, from Nevada to Florida, each RV troop follows each other like caravans of a troubled age, carrying people who are both fleeing debt and carrying the remaining pride. At least I'm still working. People working in gig economy, driving delivery, driving technology, freelancing, are the most vulnerable group. Their income is precarious, there are no fixed contracts, and when they lose their jobs, they lose their place of residence. A week without an order could mean moving to another state, where parking is cheaper, or where the law does not prohibit sleeping overnight in the car. The concept of freedom of movement used to be the pride of Americans. But now, it turns into freedom to wander. Every gas station becomes a temporary stop. Every gallon of fuel is a day to live on. To them, the car engine is not just a vehicle, but the heartbeat of existence. And that vortex works extra to pay off debt, pays off debt to get a place to sleep, then works extra to keep that place to sleep, keeps repeating endlessly. No more way up, only way around all over the states, a vicious cycle between exhaustion and fragile hope. In America, today, poverty is not just a tragedy, but is gradually becoming a crime. In Los Angeles, Portland, Phoenix, and dozens of other cities, people who were once called hard workers can now be fined, pulled, even detained, just for sleeping in their own cars. City by city promulgates new regulations disguised as protecting the urban order, but actually legalizing the punishment of poverty. Los Angeles is one of the clearest examples. The city currently has more than 10,000 people living in the car, but the Safe Parking program, where homeless people can legally sleep overnight, only provides a very small portion of parking. Between 2022 and 2024, more than 2,000 RVs were towed or confiscated, with the majority going to part-time or retired people who could not afford to pay rent. When a car is pulled, they not only lose the vehicle, but also lose the last house. In Portland, authorities even ban parking for more than 24 hours in one place, and violators can be fined or lose their car. A rule may sound small, but for someone living in an RV, it means sleeping somewhere else every night, if you don't want to lose everything. These policies are enforced in the name of urban security, but the consequences are cruel. The poor are pushed to remote areas where there is no electricity, clean water, or medical services. Once they are forced out of the city centre, they also lose their jobs, their communities, their chances of recovery. Critics call this criminalizing poverty. They argue that instead of addressing the cause of rising house prices, low wages, escalating inflation, many governments choose to push the problem out of sight. On a deeper level, these statutes not only take away the roof, but also take away dignity. When people are treated as burdens because they are poor, that society is forgetting that they are the ones who built society. Perhaps in the flashing lights of the main avenue, what America is losing is not just its compassion, but its very soul. The soul that once believed that everyone deserved a place to return. RV crisis is just the tip of a much larger iceberg. A system is rotting from the inside. It didn't start with rusty cars on Walmart parking lots, but from a long series of small cracks. Wages failing to keep up with home prices, laws protecting businesses more than workers, and a society that is gradually seeing poverty as a personal mistake instead of a consequence of the economic structure it creates. When full-time workers still have to live in the car, when authorities call overnight sleeping a violation, and when the price of a home far exceeds the affordability of an entire generation, America is not only facing a housing crisis, but an internal contradiction of the entire social model. Across the country, from California to Florida, from the Nevada desert to cold Oregon, aging RVs are becoming havens for people who once believed they were doing everything right. They don't lose because of mistakes. They lose because of a system that leaves no room for them to exist. It's a veteran who served the nation, now has to live on canned food in his car. A single mother who works 2 jobs a day to pay her child's tuition, but still sleeps in the suburban parking lot. Being a retiree living on welfare is not enough to rent a room in the city he once built. They are the generation that once created American dream, and are now seeing that dream fall right into their hands. RV homelessness is therefore more than just a housing issue. It is a symptom of a silently disintegrating society, where values that were once the foundation of morality are being eroded. Justice, dignity, and the belief that everyone who works hard deserves to live well. Workers no longer believe that overtime can save them. Young people don't believe that saving can help buy a home. Older people do not believe that the security system will protect them. And when trust breaks, every institution, every symbol, every legend ever built around the American dream also wavers. And perhaps America is standing right at that threshold. Not an external collapse, but an emptiness that spreads inside where people still move, still work, but no longer know what they are living for. Amid the bleak picture of thousands of RVs roaming across America, there are still glimmers of small but meaningful efforts. Safe parking zones, models, safe parking lots for homeless people living in the car. In San Diego or Seattle, these areas provide legal parking, clean water, electricity, security, and even employment assistance, allowing people to sleep without fear of being evicted, fined, or pulled away, car in the middle of the night. It's a rare spark in the midst of a dark reality, where millions of people just need a night of legal rest becomes a luxury. But the scale of these programs is still too small. Monthly waiting lists, precarious budgets, and areas allowed to operate are often located on the edge of the city, away from work, away from hospitals, away from everything that can help them start over. Meanwhile, in the opposite direction, many cities like Oakland expelled thousands of RVs from urban areas, citing safety and public hygiene. Convoys were forced to leave, scattered further afield, cutting off all already fragile community connections. Every time an RV is eliminated, hundreds of people lose not only their homes, but also their neighbors, friends, and the small survival network they have built. Experts warn, if house prices, gas prices, and inflation continue to escalate at the current rate, by 2030, the number of people living in cars could double. Because there is no sign that the US housing system is returning to its original function of shelter for humans, not a profitable tool. RV homelessness is therefore not only a social crisis, but a test of America's core values. Does this society still believe that a roof is a human right? Or has it accepted that housing is just a commodity for those who can afford the dream? If the American dream once started from a small home, a stable job, a safe future for children, now that dream only needs a legal parking lot to start again. The American dream, was once a symbol of opportunity, of a small house and a peaceful home, is now running away on rusty wheels. Americans still work, still pay taxes, still believe in the future, but they sleep in their cars in empty parking lots, avoid the police, and hope to not be dragged away tomorrow. When every parking lot becomes a roof, every gallon of gas is a day of existence, and every sleep is a negotiation with your law, are we still worthy of the dream we promised? And if the American dream is really turning into a new chapter, maybe that chapter starts not with the light of the building, but with the small light in an RV in the middle of a cold night, where an American is still trying to keep the faith that tomorrow they will have a place to return to again. If this story makes you think, leave a comment below. Please share this video so more people can see a real America. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so we can continue our journey together to discover real stories, real people, and dreams that haven't slept yet. The content in this video is designed to provide information and social analysis, without being absolutely affirmative or attributable to any individual or organization. All figures, characters, and citations used are based on reputable public sources, such as NBC News, Urban Institute, US Department of Labor, US Department of Labor, and independent research reports at the time of video production. The video is not for political purposes, does not incite, does not propagate or promote any extremist views. All opinions expressed only reflect a neutral, humane perspective, to encourage the audience to reflect on the social changes taking place in America today.